Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI and the ChatGPT stuff, he said this in the quote, and I thought maybe I'd get your guys' thoughts on it, and I definitely have thoughts on it. He's reportedly said that he believes AI could be in a bubble, and comparing market conditions to those of the dot-com boom and in the 90s. So you guys probably aren't old enough to even remember that stuff, but yes, this is the Mackani Show on a mission to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution right here in the hometown we love. And we do that by building the Backyard Advantage, the most connected community in the world for local entrepreneurs. And it's based around this culture of love, but it's rapidly becoming around a culture of technology as well. We invest into startups here at the Growth Factory, and I am with some emerging thought leaders in the world of venture capital and artificial intelligence and technology and how it's shaping and reshaping, the conversation today. So today should be a little bit educational. We've got Ali Mackani, one of the owners of the Growth Factory, our new partner that we have brought on. And then we have Rick Spencer. He is one of the co-founders of the Growth Factory, and he runs Growth Factory Ventures, our venture fund. So welcome to the show, guys. This is our third show together.
Third.
You guys are getting recognized. Now, when we do a show and we talk about, I'm talking a little bit about the economy and how I believe AI and technology is going to drive a lot of productivity and hopefully solve a lot of the economic woes that we have as a nation, the big concerns on everybody's plate around debt and deficits and so on. But I think that AI is a huge part of the answer. But you guys have been talking specifically about AI and about venture. I'm just wondering, sort of what feedback you're getting about the people that have seen your thoughts. Anybody want to start? Rick?
Well, I think the excitement is definitely there, right? And the excitement around all AI is there. And in venture specifically, people are seeing that, where is the future going, right? Like venture is, such a historic kind of industry. I think even I tell people that carried interest came from the whaling industry, right? So we're using principles from, multiple hundreds of years ago.
Yeah,
right?
I think Christopher Columbus was a part of a venture capital deal where he came over and discovered what he thought was America.
Yeah,
what he thought was something else.
As and we've talked about this before, as much as venture invests into AI and innovation, it hasn't really innovated itself as an industry. And so not only does it need to, to keep pace with all the opportunities AI is creating, it really needs to be, in our opinion, reinvented, right? Like the future of venture can be built. And, we, just like when we launched Growth Factory, many people said, why Sacramento, why you? And, we had the confidence that, one, there was enough great founders here, that we've been operators and we understand how to build businesses, and then we could build this amazing community, right? And so we proved a lot of people wrong. And now I think it's the next step, which is why not us? Why not now? And is this, like our new logo is is this a window of opportunity that we need to not only step into, but accelerate? And really the most, I think, validating thing is when we're having these conversations, people have tested something or the other, right, with AI, or they've seen a demo. And so it's not a new conversation, but when we structure it in this format of the Venture OS, and not just say, hey, we're building this one tool or we're building this one, data component, right? But we're actually thinking about the life cycle of venture, and not just what most people think about is pre-investment, but 80% of the opportunity post-investment. And that validation is really, energizing us, I would say, to say, okay, we're on the right track because these people want this. They're asking, how can I help? They're offering, investments. And so that's really giving us the motivation. But I'll let Ali talk a little bit more because he's actually thinking deeply about this, with our technology partners about what to build.
Yeah, I mean, to Rick's point, it's really humbling and exciting sitting in these conversations and sharing what are we doing when it comes to fundamentally thinking about the operational structure of the future of venture, what we call Venture OS, right? So that part is really exciting, and but it's just the beginning of what the future going to look like, right? In my opinion, there's a lot of experiments that are happening that are tool-based. Even our partners that we talk to, they're doing certain things, but they're just input and outputs. There is not a kind of a bigger picture orchestration of what do we think the future of venture investment going to look like. And then beyond that, once you invest, how are you going to support the portfolio companies, and how are you going to make sure that they're supported in their future rounds of fundraising? So it's this bigger picture that we're thinking about how the future of our industry should shape, and how should we think about AI as an enabler, not just an input and output tool. So it's really exciting. Our partners are, Rick mentioned it. I love when we shared the core principles of Venture OS and how the stuff will come together. The first reaction is, how can I get it? Where can I start?
Right. Yeah. You're using that is more than a tool. That's your business model.
Yeah, exactly. So
I want to borrow your business.
and we're just trying to be smart, right? I think the key here is the future of startups that we're going to invest in is AI native. They're AI first. So if they are building with AI as their enabler, what is our enabler? How are we thinking about venture, and what's going to be the enabler for us to be part of the next 100 years of venture versus what we learned from the traditional way of us going about running the business of venture firms?
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about, I think we may have touched on this at the last show. This is our third show. Is how much is this overhyped? And we're excited about it because we're in the middle of building something, and we're around people that are building in this space. So obviously we really sound like we're promoting it, but I want to make sure that we share perspectives a little bit so that we can provide context on how everybody might want to think about this and how it might shape their life. So Rick, you had sent over CNBC. I watch a lot of CNBC because that's how I catch up on my business news. But they're talking about AI all the time on CNBC. And Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI and the ChatGPT stuff, he said this in the quote, and I thought maybe I'd get your guys' thoughts on it, and I definitely have thoughts on it. He's reportedly said that he believes AI could be in a bubble, and comparing market conditions to those of the dot-com boom and in the 90s. So you guys probably aren't old enough to even remember that stuff, but in those times, people were talking about the internet just like we are today. People were putting .com is the name of their company, Amazon.com and so on, but a lot of them got shaken out at the beginning. And so when I hear a comment like Sam Altman's, I think of a .com bubble bust scenario as meaning maybe a healthy reset in a way, that there might be some healthy resets along the way, because we can see what's happened to Amazon and the ones that figured it out and made space for a lot of other companies that had to do with the internet and now mobile to flourish. And it's been tremendous for not only productivity, but for creating wealth. And so there might be some little bubble bursting that happens, but we're at the very beginning of something that is still going to be big, even if we have a few little bubbles burst. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think, just like bubbles that have happened before, whether it's .com or whether, it was the real estate, right? This is where people are trying to predict, and they're investing, and then it's easy for other people to get excited and invest, and so then it just compounds, right? So you get some initial people, then you get the next wave, and then now with AI, everyone's saying everyone's talking about it, I need to invest, and that now is just compounding and compounding. And so I think Sam Altman's point is correct, and he's benefited hugely from the growth of the value of OpenAI, and obviously they've had tremendous adoption of users, so at least they can show the behavioral change, right? ChatGPT has become a verb just like Google was that redefined the internet. And however, is the value there, right? And that's the concern, is this a bubble because all this money is being poured into it, but we don't see the value yet, right? And so that's where, to your point, Mark, there has to be a reset, right? Because just because all the money's invested doesn't mean the value is matching that level of investment.
If we were to ask ChatGPT what percentage of today's startups that are venture backable are not going to be here 10 years from now, what do you think it would say? Or what would you say?
Yeah, I mean,
how many of these guys aren't going to make it?
Right. I would say 99%.
Most won't make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when Sam talks about bubble, I would want to know which part of the AI he's talking about there's a bubble. I truly think there is a bubble in the foundational models, right? We have enough. We have enough ChatGPTs of the world, the Groks of the world, and all those. I think that's where the bubble is. The foundational models are now, they're not any better than each other. They're just a little different, right? So they've been democratized. No, we don't need any more. I think that the layers, right? If you think about the models as the LLMs, and then you have the partner models. These are products that have started to build AI internally to their tools, and then you have the layer that becomes more of the context layer, right? And then becomes the agent layer. The context layer is just starting. Everyone talks about data to be the moat, right? Of what those who have data set are going to own the moat of the future. In my opinion, it's actually the context. It's what we know about the situation and how we want to manage it. What do we want the outcome and how we should understand it? Yes, data is king, but having context of how you want the environment to be processed, managed, and output, it's as important as the data. So I don't see it as a bubble. I just think that, to your point, there's a significant amount of investment has been made on this early stage foundational work. And like every hype cycle, there is a hype. There's ambulance chasers who wants to invest because there is a label on this as an AI company. I think 99% is correct that gonna fail, but same with the .coms of the world, that ton of .com companies came out and built generational change in the world. I believe the same thing is going to happen here from the AI perspective, but it's not going to happen on the LLM side. Okay,
can I challenge you on that?
Yeah,
in a way that I have no idea. But so the LLM side, maybe we can break this down for people. It uses the English language to go out and extract data and come back and make sense of it so that we can make decisions and get things done, right? That's what ChatGPT does. Did I say that correctly in your mind?
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
Right? It brings you back information that has learned to what's available openly on the internet. So it's just repeating, but it's doing a better job of repeating than me and you, right?
Okay.
But does it actually give you enough that I could make a decision, you could make a decision, or the AI itself could make a decision? We're not there yet, right?
Okay, so it's our world out to the world, right? It's our window out to the world, and what you're saying is that is not in the stage of getting disrupted anytime soon, because that LLM model or type of platform, there's nothing on the horizon that will be invented that sort of is 10 times better than that.
I think the LLMs that exist are going to, they're going to iterate over time, and they're just going to get faster, more relevant, probably better results that will come out, right? But is it these LLMs going to dramatically change and become superior versus others? I don't think
they're
so.
Just going to leapfrog each other in incremental improvement.
That's right. One going to give you better, context. One going to give you better audio, video, graphics, but they're just going to compete with each other, right? I think where innovation is going to happen, where we're going to be able to and be enabled to make better decisions faster or cheaper, is as these next layer of models that are very much context-based, agents that are understanding the environment better, understanding the workflow better, and they'll come at it from a, how do I solve this problem? I think those are the one that's going to make a difference in the growth and the value of AI.
Maybe we can kind of try to run some like parallel comparisons to other industries, like the railroad. As we built out our railroad or our highway system, or even the internet superhighway, or these kind of things happen, and it drove a lot of productivity, which has been what I've been thinking is going to happen for the way we live our lives. We're just going to get a lot more productive. How is there an end? Does it end, or does it just continually get built out? Does the building of the infrastructure end?
I'll go back to the highway example,
okay,
because I think it's relevant, right? So roads started, and the roads determined that I could get to a point faster, easier, right? That improved tires and wheels and from carriage to cars, right? But then as that road became value, the road had to get expanded. And then the roads turn into streets turn into, major thoroughways, and then freeways and highways, right? Because it started creating value that people wanted to use. I think in the AI world right now, we're very much at that early stage of the road. Mm-hmm. The road is being built and people are on it. And at some point, we're going to go, okay, wait a minute. The value is here. How do we expand now?
So people create their own roads.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think I like that analogy, because where's like the big value jump going to happen? And so a lot of people are going to be driving on the roads, yes. And I picture that from like, okay, they went to Google to search, and now they're going to go to ChatGPT to search, and they're going to find things and they're going to learn things, right? But is that going to deliver value, right? Cumulatively, right, you have a lot of eyeballs, and so you can generate value for a few winners, right? But imagine building a bridge, like the first people that had to build a bridge across a river, mm-hmm. right? And that made you say, oh, now we've opened up huge places to go, right? But no one could just step in and build a bridge, right? Doing a road, it's like, pave the dirt, maybe, lay some concrete, right? Like, it's a simpler process than what it takes to build a bridge.
That's right.
But building
the engineering work,
yes,
it's such a completely different, yes.
Yeah, and that's where maybe you could expand a little bit, especially in venture, around why this context layer is so important, right? Because you can take a pitch deck now and put it to ChatGPT and it can summarize it, but it's not going to give you the context that you can then put into a model that helps investors streamline their decisions, have better insights, and they still make the decisions. But if they're going in every time and still just searching better or, summarizing better, that's the road, right?
Yeah.
But if the context layer can be that bridge to better decisions, I think that's what you're trying to say. And maybe you could explain, what does that look like for the Venture OS?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to optimize the way we process things. That's the goal of AI anyways, right? It's how do we think about accelerating time to value and time to making decisions, and how do we scale our opportunity in the future. So a context layer or a context engine in our world, as we think about the Venture OS, is understanding every data set, data point, input and output. And how does that play in a role of us understanding true and the truth of that, so we could make better decision moving forward every step. When you think about an input of a deck, for example, there's a lot of effort that the founding team put that deck together, because they had to find a way to share their idea, share their vision, how they see the world, how they want to solve the world. And that is not just in a simple, in a text that's on a deck. It comes with images, it comes with placement of information, it comes with graphs, it comes with indicators, right? So when you think about the a traditional or it's no longer traditional, but thinking about the AI models today, the ChatGPTs of the world, when you give them that, it doesn't have any more context other than I have a bunch of information. I'm going to start reading it from the top left down to the top right, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to translate what I see. But that doesn't mean that it actually understood the context of why the founder put a particular element on a slide at a particular location with a particular color. That's where the context needs to be understood. That's where we're focusing on. That's just an example. In everything we do, we need to understand the context if we're going to rely on an AI model to help us make better decisions. So we need to feed it that context. So we're starting with thinking about how do we build our own context engine that's able to take a look at something and quickly reflect on the context and build the context out of it, and then go out and translate the information. So it's an interesting way of trying to solve a problem that it's based on reducing amount of time that it takes for us to make a decision. So the sooner we understand the context, the faster we could get to the information that helps us to make it.
So let's talk about the decisions we need to make in a venture fund, and because we're probably not that much different than we're different than other venture funds, but we have to decide where to deploy, right? Where to invest the money, and then how can we help afterwards? How can we help engineer wins? What can we do to sort of maximize this for our limited partners? A lot of that has come in some of our terminology is like we like to engineer wins. Can you share with me and our audience like what that might look like? What data might come together to cause you to take an action?
Yeah, I think, some of it is insights. I think about it as when I talk to a portfolio company, I start to think and map out kind of where's their biggest opportunity and how can I help, right? But I'm only able to do that for how fast my brain can work, right? And what I can remember, right? And what is it a good day? Am I tired that day? All these things. So imagine we could say, okay, one, do we even know what the greatest opportunity is for that company, right? Because there's human bias where we may think, oh, I think it's this. The founder thinks it's this. And if we have a model that says, well, did you consider this? And no one, we could sit down with founders, advisors, ourselves, and no one may have thought of that, insight, right? And so it starts right there. Okay, let's put that insight into this equation. Oh, now as we think about it, right? Have you ever been on one of those meetings where everyone's talking about something and someone brings in another idea and the whole conversation changes?
Yeah, you discover things.
Right.
That's right.
So that it could start just with that insight. Then it's like, okay, if we all agree that is the right major opportunity, what's the best strategy? And typically, again, you have bias. We would talk about, oh, this is your idea, this is your idea, this is my idea. Maybe we come to consensus on what strategy, but can we simulate that? Can we model that, right? And say, okay, why are we only choosing one strategy? Why don't we test 5 strategies? And why don't we test it in these ways? And so now we're not just, usually it's like consensus building, like where I need to build a consensus because we can only choose one strategy because we only have the capacity to do that strategy. What if we can test 5 strategies? And then we use that data to say, this is the leading strategy, so now let's put more resources into that.
Give me an example of testing a strategy, 5 at a time. What does that look like using AI?
Well, there is no limit on how fast we could test when you have the models working, right? But imagine there is an opportunity that we're evaluating. To your point, we need to evaluate it, we need to invest it, and then we're going to then figure out how to support it, right? But what happens if we could test that entire life cycle at the front and test it multiple ways and test it with not only the founding team or the idea or the market, but what happens in the changes that will happen in other sectors that could impact that? Right, this predictability model, these projections that happens in how we're thinking about building the Venture OS allows us to actually get much deeper and wider in how we understand opportunity. And potentially we could understand opportunity today, and we could then ride the journey with the founders every stage that move forward, to be able to not only learn from the changes in the environment that they had to face or the pivots that they need to do, but it helps us to understand that they're at this stage and our model was either right or wrong, and now we're predicting the next stage. This allows us to become better in the loop. Today, we're humans with tools in the loop, right? Mm-hmm. We have to continue to leverage these tools to tell us that the future that we see is tools with humans in the loop, and allows us to then orchestrate where we want. So testing 5 different scenarios at one time is not just about, does this product work? Or will this product make the market and interrupt some kind of a legacy product? It's about all that and every other input and output of market changes or other portfolio companies or other venture firms that we're partnered with. How would this impact that entire ecosystem becomes the opportunity?
I love it. Okay, so we're talking about winners and losers a little bit. So there'll be winners and losers in venture. The ones that embrace the best way to invest, they're going to win, and they're going to be using technology. They're going to be using AI in an enormous way for starting now, but for the foreseeable future, we're only going to get better at this stuff, and we're building it as part of our operating system. So I love that. But in thinking about, there's sort of a bigger picture that maybe is more relatable for, let's call it the general population. There's kind of a big AI race happening in other industries. There's the large language models, and there may be other areas. What could you impart to us in terms of who you see as the winners when it comes to the large language models? Is it going to be a winner take all, or will there be a dozen open AIs? You say it's becoming democratized.
I mean, I don't know if there is going to be a winner in the large language models. I think there will be one or two that are going to constantly outdo each other or compete. But having multiple models is actually healthy, because they bring new innovative ways of us thinking about how can we process information. So I don't think there is going to be winner take all. I just think that like any good car race, there'll be someone that's leading the lap, and they're going to get lapped, right? And I think that's just the way the technology is going to play out on the models.
Yeah, it seems to me that there'll be some that the developers really like using, and then there might be some that are really good for the consumer.
That's right.
And maybe some are good for other sectors of the economy. Rick, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, to your point, the consumer or developer. I think those are great examples, right? Like consumers, the adoption, the user adoption of ChatGPT. I mean, I don't remember the statistics, but the speed of their user adoption is, I don't think, ever been achieved before in another product, right? And as we know, like the average consumer, it's hard to change, right? That's why Google became a verb, and that's why Google owned the search market, right? Yes, there was Bing, and there was ones before it, right? But most people, 90% of people just Googled, and that's what it was. So I think ChatGPT is definitely leading it as far as people don't like to change their behavior. They don't like to test new things. They've heard it reinforced so many times, it's become the verb. And so in the consumer space, it's going to be pretty hard. And you'll hear analysts look at this like, well, if Gemini is this, that much better, is the consumer going to care about that little bit of performance? No. They have their behavior, it's ingrained, and it's there, right? So I think they're the clear favorite right now to be that winner. Now, on the developer side, that space is moving so quickly that's where we get excited, because the performance and the opportunity there is no winner yet. And those things are where we, in our world of venture capital, can see the most value created. So that goes back to the value, right? It's like, sure, ChatGPT and OpenAI may have the most users, and that has value, but how much value, right? Is that just the commodity? Does that just become, they have hundreds of millions of users and that's worth this, but that is going to be static, versus these other models that start to say, hey, a group like us of 5 people can operate like 500. What value does that bring, right? And that's where it's, an open market and really exciting.
Yeah. I would just add that in the enterprise world, adopting one model I actually think is a dangerous thing to do. In the enterprise world, it needs to be an orchestration of these models. There needs to be a layer that sits on top of all these models and be able to orchestrate the best of them for the right reason, at the right time, for the right person, right? I think individually, we pick and choose what we want because it fits our workflow or what we think, what our skill sets are. But when I think about the CIOs of enterprises, their strategy for AI needs to be a multi-AI strategy, as in how are we going to orchestrate the best of Gemini from best of Grok and best of ChatGPT to ensure that we're able to run our business given the complexity of the enterprise operations.
I had a thought. I saw something on the internet earlier, and I sent it over to Scott, and I didn't send it to you guys, but I'm going to play it for you. And it talks about robots, and this came to mind as something that we might want to talk about today, because I know, Rick, we recently had a nice exit from a robot company. We had invested into a robot company. And then I thought, we're not invested into a lot of robot companies, but where robots,
not yet.
Yeah, we're invested in a few, but where robots kind of meet this technology and how, what size industry the robots are going to be. So let me play this clip and get your feedback on this. It's from a guy named Mark Andreessen. I think both of you guys have heard of that guy before.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a plausible argument, which Elon also believes, that robotics is going to be the biggest industry in the history of the planet. It's going to be gigantic. There's going to be billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of robots of all shapes, sizes, descriptions running around doing all kinds of things. Those robots need to get designed and built. My view is, we don't try to get the old manufacturing jobs back. What we should do is lean hard into the manufacturing jobs of the future, which is designing and building all of these new things, by the way, which includes drones and cars, right, and robots. We shouldn't be building manufacturing lines that have people sitting on a rubber mat for 10 hours screwing screws in by hand, but we should be building, what Elon calls alien dreadnought factories, right, which is like these super sophisticated factories with like tons of robotics. But you can imagine thousands and thousands of different categories of industrial production that have to happen all across the US in order to make this happen, and would cause just like enormous economic growth throughout the country. We get a huge payoff from all the tech investment that the coasts are making, but we generate many tens or hundreds of millions of jobs in the countryside. And then the US would lead. It would be, be the third industrial or fourth industrial revolution. We would lead in the development of all these new things. And then you get to the national security side of this, which is if you don't do this, you're living in a world of Chinese robots everywhere.
Yeah, so in thinking about the race, right? The race, we talk about who the big winners and losers. It is a national thing that we need to do this. I've talked a little bit about on this show and previous shows about the economy and how important it is to have a strong economy, and that's part of national security. But when you think about who wins this race, if you will, who can build the fastest robot, the robots the fastest, that's got such an impact on all of this in so many different ways. So maybe just get your thoughts on, do you agree that there's going to be billions of robots? And then do you agree with Mark Andreessen about the kind of impact that's going to have on our economy?
I think there will be millions of robots.
Millions, not billions?
Billions of robots in everything. I mean, listen, there is millions of robots right now.
Yeah, I think most people, when they think of robot, the average person thinks of like the humanoid.
Humanoid,
right?
Yeah.
And they think of like a human companion.
That's right.
But what is a robot, right? I mean, you said we have some in our portfolio company. Yeah, it's like we have a robot that is a box, but that box is helping change diagnostics in healthcare, right? Where a clinician can put a sample from a human into this robot, and that can diagnose better than the average human. It can streamline things, right? And so that doesn't walk, it doesn't talk.
That's right.
It doesn't move like with limbs, but that box is a robot, and it's helping improve, in this case, first indication is scanning for cancer, right? So very significant, both as value for healthcare, value for humans, all these things. And so there are already so many robots, but where it's going is definitely, billions.
Yeah, I mean, all of us are operating robots today. Mm-hmm. We're part of it. The minute that you get in a car, the car is a robot.
You got a Tesla.
No, I mean, even if you don't have a Tesla, your car is recognizing, it's giving you sensors in regards to, you're getting too close to the car, or you're crossing the road.
I got a 2012 Toyota truck. It doesn't do any of that crap.
Well, we need to get you a robot.
Yeah, we got to get a real car.
No, but I mean, I think everything that we are touching, having, experimenting, experiencing, robots are part of it. From your household, equipment that you're using to your cars, and now you start thinking about the manufacturing. Well, manufacturing's been with robots for decades. Mm-hmm. It's just things are changing and shifting. We're getting smarter. Technology has accelerated beyond our imagination. We thought things were changing fast. Things are changing daily now, right? I mean, daily, what was true yesterday is changed today. So technology is moving things forward at a much rapid pace, and robotics going to become the enablers for us to scale. And productivity comes from scaling, and I think that we're going to find a way that coexist with robots and humans almost with 24 hours a day in everything that we do, right? And I find that really fascinating, and I think that's where the opportunities for the future are.
Oh, it's the perfect point, the scaling point, right? Because the in this case, that final comment was his prediction is this is a matter of national security, right? Like, you can't scale people, right? And historically, things were taken through war, and that required people. And yes, there was strategy, and yes, there were tools. But ultimately, whether it's wars or whether it's the growth of an economy, it's always requiring people. And you can't make more people, right?
That's right.
And so, not only if you can scale your productivity more, then you can grow it, and it's an economy. And if you're at the source of that IP, and you're the ones that are leading that, fourth industrial revolution, and so you're the world leader in creating this technology, then you hold that power of not only have you scaled your country, but you're the source of knowledge that's going to help all these other countries scale. Yeah. And so that is obviously the future. If that were to be true, would make us the most powerful country in the world for a long, long time.
Yeah. It makes me think about opportunity, how to tie it back to maybe my family or your family or somebody listening and their family. You've got I think your daughter's about 14. Mm-hmm. I've got a 14-year-old granddaughter. She goes, and then all the way down to a 1.5-year-old and everything in between. And so the jobs of the future are probably going to look different. And the AI, obviously we're talking a lot about AI, but the investment that is going into manufacturing and robots and building factories here in America, it's trillions. So there will be millions of jobs created that are closer to a blue collar job. That is, we have this huge shortage of blue collar workers in America today, and that isn't going to go away in the next, doesn't look like 10 or 15 years. If ever, we're going to need those. We're going to need to build robots as fast as we can build them. I'm sure we'll have robots building robots, but somebody's got to build out these factories, because it really will be a race. And so the job that you thought you might do, that job of mid-management or admin, that might not be as likely to be there, but there's huge jobs on running robots, managing AI, and then building out the infrastructure for this big race.
Yeah. And I think so it's important too, like the blue collar situation is definitely there, and less people want to do that work. And again, the population of the world overall is not growing. So where are we going to find those people? But how does how do agents and other parts of AI apply to the knowledge workforce in the same way, right? Like so much work has been done just moving things around, where someone grabs a PDF and emails a PDF and, we're just moving things. Like 80% of work can be just moving data around and moving. And so that's not value add, right? It's very shallow work. And so the same can apply to, do all these jobs that exist today, will they exist in the future? Probably not, but what will replace them? And that value creation is significant. And that's where these, economic predictions of, okay, if we can be in the forefront of this, what does that mean? We could create the future of this country for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I always think if you're if you're saving the company or making the company money, there's probably a spot for you on the team now or in the future. It's all those people that are sort of, doing the tasky type stuff. Those are going to go. But if you're driving the top line, there's a spot for you, which has to do with like being good with humans, being a good team player.
I think the national security topic, I think about it a little differently. I think the national security topic needs to be about how are we educating our kids. I think if we look at what's happening in China and how they're thinking about their future, and talk about population challenge, right? How they're repurposing their people. I think there's a lot for us to take a look at there, but we need to understand how are we planning to iterate on our education system for the future, right? Not everyone needs to be an engineer. Not everyone needs to be a data scientist. Or AI builder, but we need to start thinking about how are we going to empower the future workforce with AI as the driving force in it. And I believe we need to think about math and science, but we also need to think about trades and how we're going to really teach people how to become skilled in a particular manufacturing environment or particular vertical that they could become value add to not only to that but also to the society, right? So I think from a national security perspective, we don't talk about education enough.
Agreed.
We really need to think about it. The war in Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine, if you think about how those wars are fought and how robots are enabling some of the gains and obviously some of the misery, right? Do we even have the skill set of what would require for us to build those things at scale today? I don't think we do. And I think that's where education really needs to be thought of.
Something that was announced today, and I haven't looked into it yet, was Melania Trump announcing some AI challenge for youth, and it had to do with the education, and so it's starting to become talked about at some level. But what seems to be talked about the most with I guess anything in the news is that, all the negative kind of gets the attention, right? Whenever there's a problem, let's talk about it, dissect it. And people are talking about things like the American dream. Is it still here? Do we still have it? And my thought is that we do. But I was listening to somebody the other day. They were talking about the three of the components of the American dream. One is having a house that you can count on, that's got access to opportunity. It's close enough to a place to work, maybe a good job and other kinds of opportunity. You also need a good education, right? You just talked about that. You need to have good schools. You need to be in a place where you can educate yourself well for your children. And then also you need to stay healthy, right? So you got to have that good access to healthcare and that kind of thing. If you have those, that you probably live in the American dream at some level. You're probably part of an opportunity to be happy in life and pursue happiness. But it's interesting to think about those three components and how technology has not done justice in solving education. It hasn't done justice, I think, in solving healthcare, even though we're working around the edges on that. And it's not being used to build houses a lot more effectively. So those three areas, because of regulation and a variety of pushback, technology hasn't really found its way into those arenas.
Yeah.
So look at the price of these things.
Right. I think we've talked about this before too, is that just take education as an example, right? I mean, both the opportunity for us to lose, as far as national security, but also the financial opportunity of if people are just thinking about AI and like, oh, look at ChatGPT, how fast it grew. So let's just try to create something that grows really fast versus saying, okay, how do I apply this new technology to something like education? And it's going to be harder because everything's so ingrained, right? We have institutions, education is a business in many places, post high school. You have all these systems and there's state rules and federal rules. And so disrupting is not easy, right? Because there's so much, but the people that can disrupt it not only can help, this country be safe, but they can extract a ton of value.
Well, look at how technology affected watching TV. I mean, the price of any electronics has gone down because there's no regulation. And even in healthcare, look at LASIK, right? LASIK is outside of the regulatory bodies, and the price of LASIK has come down. It's way better than it used to be in medicine. So finding a way to maybe attack from the edges, but maybe even systematically figure out a way to get technology into the middle of these areas that are, I guess, costing us way too much money.
Yeah. I mean, there is the compounding effect that happens that technology is really good at, right? From paper applications to an online application, right? Look how much productivity we got just when that was able to come to at scale and to the masses. I think that the three sectors that you talked about, housing, education, and healthcare, I believe AI will have that compounding effect on these three sectors to bring the cost down. And I think that's where the winner is going to be. It's the practical way of empowering humans to have a better life. If we could leverage AI to help us be able to build faster, build cheaper, get through the process of permitting houses faster, right? New material that we could use to build, new areas that we could build that we never thought we could build because we never had the insight that we could ever process fast enough to make those decisions. AI could help us there. I think we could build homes faster, operate them, cheaper and get them more accessible. That goes on and on in education and in healthcare, right? We've never had this force function that AI has, that brings to us. I think to your point you made we can't scale ourselves. There's so much we could do to get through whatever task that we want to do. AI can scale. And that is the force function that I believe will make a difference in the future of humanity. And we don't talk about that enough. I think to your point, we always want to talk about the negatives, right? and because that sells, that's the headline, the fear factor, right? But I think if we really think about where the opportunities are and how can this AI as a change agent could really lead what we want and talk about that and educate people on it, I think we'll have a better outcome and people will show up differently because they see the value.
Go ahead, Rick. I
think it's important too, I think we're getting close to wrapping.
Yeah.
So
why don't you give us your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's really an invitation, right? I think people, if they've listened to these episodes, they're like, okay, this is, exciting and they're enthusiastic. And this is what we're thinking about full time. This is all we are doing. And so those people with those early ideas that say, hey, yeah, I want to attack education. I have this idea. I want to attack healthcare. I have this idea. I want to attack housing. I want to attack enterprise A, right? These are the people we want to meet, we want to talk to, because we're not saying we have all the answers. We're not saying we figured it all out. We're just saying we're passionate about building this future. And, the backyard advantage means we need to build the backyard alongside it, right? We just want this community to continue to grow. We want these people who are committed enthusiastic, and really want to drive this forward to join us. And so those people need to get in touch with us so that we can hear those ideas. We can add this, to what we're building. I just talked to a guy today. He's been a mortgage broker his whole life. And he said, hey, all these real estate brokers are testing AI agents, but what about the compliance piece? And he figured out, oh, okay, I could actually find value in building how these agents are compliant, and I would be the only one doing that, right? And so these are the people we want to talk to every single day, because that will continue to help us build this backyard, and they can be part of this.
I love it. Closing thoughts, Ali?
I think we just need to be more intentional in what we do and how we do it. I think that's where we need to show up, right? And I think enabling and supporting those who are really thinking about changing the world for the better, right? We should be more intentional on how we dig in with them, which he does it every day, and I wish I could scale him. But since we can't scale Rick, we need to learn from him and then be able to optimize a system around him so we could scale the value that we bring, right? So let's be purposeful about what we do, and let's have those who come to us be purposeful why they're coming to us, right? I think if we show up like that, I think we could make a big difference.
And I guess my closing thoughts were, I agree with what you two both said, but just as the older guy of the group, I've seen some of these opportunities, like when the internet came into existence and mobile and these other big changes, and I think this one's bigger than all of those in its own way as we think about where we're at today as a society. But I feel lucky, and I think everybody out there should sort of think about where they're at, and do they want to be in the middle of probably the most revolutionary thing to happen in our lifetime? And if they do want to be in the middle of it, I can tell you it feels good to be at the cutting edge, because I've been busy doing other things while our country has been reshaped. I was selling security cameras or coaching football or whatever I had been doing, but now I feel like I'm right here next to people that are really at the heart of these changes and are really a part of the change. So I would agree with Rick. Be a part of the change, and if you don't know where to go to be a part of it, maybe you should, stop by Growth Factory.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.